Hey everybody, welcome to Home Recording Made Easy and Mix Tip Tuesday, where every Tuesday I show you a new mixing tip to help you make more professional sounding mixes in your home studio. Before we get to this week's tip, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit that notification bell and also stick around to the end of the video, because at the end of the video I have something I want to give you absolutely free that's really going to help you with your mixing training, so be sure to stick around. Okay, everybody, welcome. So in this week's Mix Tip Tuesday video, we are going to talk about a concept called top-down mixing, or what's commonly known as top-down mixing, where is a real basic concept where before you start adding a bunch of plugins to all your individual tracks, that you start at the bus level and do the mixing at the bus level before you start tweaking the individual tracks to get it to sound as good as you can get it to sound before you need to go in there and start messing with individual tracks. This will do a couple of things. One, if tracks are recorded pretty well, it's going to help speed up your mixing workflow, which is great. And two, it's going to probably limit the amount of plugins and processing that you need to put on your mix, which is always a good thing. And again, a lot of this, as I always say in these Mix Tip Tuesday videos, is really dependent on the source material, but that's the basic concept. So let me kind of show you. So what we have here is we have a full mix here with no plugins outside of the phase correction to auto align that we did a couple of Mix Tip Tuesdays back. But outside of that, there are no plugins on this mix at all. We have all down here in brown our drum kit. We have a bunch of percussion tracks here, bongos, congos, tambourines, shakers, claps. We have a bass guitar. We have 3 electric guitar tracks here in green. We have a B3 organ. We have a Wurlitzer, and we have a horn section down here in purple. We have saxophones, trumpets, so on and so forth, and a sax solo. And then we have a lead vocal, and then we have a few background vocal tracks. Okay, so it's a pretty large session, about 35 tracks, all running to a busing system down here in black to the far right, which is what I typically do in most of my mixes. So for every sets of groupings of instruments, I have a bus track for that. So for example, I have a drum bus, a percussion bus, a bass bus, guitar bus, keyboards, horns, lead vocals, and background vocals. And all those groupings of instruments, the outputs are routed to these buses. Okay, so now after you do your static mix, which again, we've talked about a couple of videos ago, a couple of Tuesdays ago, and I'll leave all the links in the description box for the prior episodes of Mix Tip Tuesday. If you have not seen them, check them out. They're really handy. But once we get our static mix kind of together, we do some preliminary panning, and we've checked some of the other things out that we talked about in prior episodes. Now we're going to take a listen to this mix, and we're going to do this top-down mixing approach where before we touch the individual tracks, we're going to start at the buses. So now what we can do is there's a couple of ways you can do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower all the bus tracks down to 0, even the drums here, and we're going to start just playing back this section. I'm going to bring up the drums. Okay, so the only thing I've done on the individual drum tracks is a basic static mix. Here's our percussion, our bass, we're just trying to get it to sound balanced. Some guitars. Keyboards.
The hate gets inside us, not breaking up, march together as one, can't say it enough, arms locked together in love.
Okay, so this is a song by the group Fat Hat, and the name of the song is Locked Together. By the way, great track, real fun to mix. This is a really cool song. Okay, so now that we kind of got the buses kind of balanced, going to throw them up there, got them balanced, sounds pretty good. Okay, now we're going to start at our master bus. So on our master bus, we're going to say, okay, we're going to start processing top-down mixing. Going to go to the master bus first, and maybe we're going to add a little bit of, again, depending on what plugins you want to use or what you have. Let's just stick with basic EQ and compression stuff in case you're just using stock plugins. But you can do this with any plugins. You can do this if you have third-party plugins and you want to use things like console emulation or tape plugins and all those things. Again, what do we want to put on the master bus to get this mix just the way it is to sound as good as possible. And we'll stick primarily with EQ and compression for this particular tutorial, okay? So let's start off with an EQ first. Because we don't have any EQ on anywhere else on the mix, let's just put a regular stock EQ up here. Okay, and let's play back this section of music again. And what we're going to look for is things, you know, like we're going to have some low end, some low cut, maybe some high cut, maybe some mid-range cuts, maybe on this EQ to kind of get rid of some of the nasty frequencies that we don't have being dealt with on the individual tracks quite yet.
Deep inside our hearts.
You know, a better way to do this so you could hear this a little better, let me call an audible on this. Let me use a fab filter. You can use a stock EQ, but I want to use something where I can really isolate the frequencies and you guys can hear this a little bit better, okay? So we're going to use the Fab Filter Pro Q, okay? Again, this is the same as the stock EQ with the exception of
This love be unconditional.
we have these little headphones that I can click on, and now you can hear where I'm putting this low cut, which in this particular case is 38 Hertz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a low cut and get rid of a lot of this low end rumble, 20, 30 Hertz. Okay.
Waking up.
I'm also going to do something on the high end because again, we don't have any EQs anywhere on this mix. So I'm going to use a high cut as well.
And hey.
I want to hear if there's any kind of nastiness at the top. There really isn't. Around 17K. Now I'm going to come up here in this mid-range area because we know between that 4 and 5, 600 Hertz range, I can already hear there's a bunch of woofiness, some boxiness. We're going to try to get rid of some of this on the master bus. So we're going to take a mid cut here. Right there, about 509, 509 Hertz. Take out a few dB of that. Now I'm also going to see, is there any other nasty frequencies up in the low mids here? We'll just check it out. There may or may not be.
Let this love be unconditional. Empower your brother to be better. We're rising up 'cause we've had enough of the hate that
No, sounds pretty good there. So we'll delete this point. We'll now also check in the upper mids to see if we have any nastiness up there.
divides us. We're standing up, not giving up. Hold each other up, arms locked together in love. We're waking up.
Little nastiness there, a little over 3K.
Let the hate get inside us, not breaking.
And again, we're only taking out a couple of dB at most here, 2, 3 dB, that's really it. So now by getting rid of the low cut, the low rumble, the real high end stuff, if there's any nastiness, a little bit in the mids and a little bit in that nasally area, now we're going to have a mix that sounds a little bit more clean. So let's go before the EQ move. I'll bypass it by clicking this button in the top left-hand corner. We'll start without the EQ, then we'll bring it in, listen to the difference.
Deep inside our hearts, let this love be unconditional. Empower your brother to be better. We're rising up 'cause we've had enough of the hate that divides us.
Let's go 4.
We're standing up, not giving up.
After, okay, so it cleans up a little bit of the mid-range. Again, it's a very subtle thing, and hopefully you're listening to this on good headphones or good studio monitors. I failed to say that at the beginning. But this EQ filtering kind of is another Mix Tip Tuesday episode from a couple of weeks back where I talk about this more in depth, but here we're doing it on the master bus. We're starting on the master bus. We're just cleaning it up a little bit. Now maybe we're going to add a little bit of compression to this as well. So let's get ourselves a compressor, and again, we could use anything, but something on the master bus, you know, something like maybe maybe, I don't know, like an SSL emulation or something like that, we can use something like the FG Gray by Slate Digital, but you can use a stock plugin, doesn't really matter. We're going to do something like a 2-to-1 ratio on the master bus. We're going to do a pretty fast release and a pretty slow attack. And we're just going to kind of kiss the needle, add a little bit of color of this by dialing back the threshold to kind of tighten up the mix a little bit.
Hold each other up, arms locked together in love. We're waking up and hanging tough. Don't let
Before.
the hate get inside us. Not breaking up, march together as one. Can't say it enough, arms locked together in love.
So we're compressing a little over a dB. I'm adding about a dB of makeup gain back in. That's before. Okay, so now we got a little bit of compression on the master bus, okay? Now this is not to say, again, that we're not going to go to each individual track and that you would start processing it there as well. You probably will in most cases, but you're going to do a lot less of it by starting with a top-down mixing approach. So now that we got kind of EQ and compression on the master bus, now we want to do the same thing on our individual buses. Now again, I'm in the spirit of trying to save some time in this video, I'm not going to do all of this on camera. We'll do the first couple of tracks, then I'll do the rest of the tracks off camera, and then we'll listen to the before and after so I can get you guys out of here and you can start applying this to your next mix. So let's start off on the drums here. We'll solo up the drums. Okay. Sounds pretty good. Now, same thing. We're going to go over, going to get some EQ out maybe. Drums are sound pretty good. We're going to take that kind of same approach that we did on the master bus. So maybe we're going to put a little of a low cut here if we need it. Low cut filter. Oops. Maybe around 30 hertz or so. We want that nice low end of the kick drum there. Okay, let's see if we have any mids in here that we may need to take care of. Right there, all that hollowness, that's a 320. Take a little bit of that out. Maybe you want to enhance this a little bit. A little more crack on the snare, maybe around 4, 5K. Okay. Before, after. Sounds great. Maybe put a little bit of light compression on this as well, right? Just a way to kind of tighten it up. Again, we can go back to something like Slate Digital. Again, I'm just grabbing plugins. You could do this with stock plugins as well. I like these Slate Digital ones because they have some nice color to them. So if you're using third-party plugins, this is a great, when you're doing this approach, this will really help using these kinds of plugins. So yeah, we're going to bring back the threshold a little bit. Okay, we're not going to hit it too hard. It's before, after. So I like this particular compressor because I know it has kind of a top end, a little bit of a top end boost to it. Like I added some top end on the EQ. This will give a little bit more clarity, a little bit more crack to the snare, a little more sizzle to the cymbals by using this particular compressor. But again, you can use any compressor. Okay. So now we have a little bit of EQ here and we have a little bit of compression on our drums. So now if we were to take these two plugins away, it's before, after. Big difference, right? Okay. We could do the same thing with percussion. If we solo up our percussion. So let's grab this. Nope, this one. Solo it. Okay, let's put some low cuts on here. Okay, we want some enhance it a little bit. Solo. Some tambourine and whatnot in here, right around 10K. And again, you should do this not maybe in solo. I'm doing it in solo just so you could hear the difference, but you may want to do this with the drums playing as well. So make sure it sounds EQ'd well together as opposed to in solo. Okay. And again, maybe a little compression here as well. We can use a regular stock compressor on this one if we like. Where's our compressor here? Here we go. So on buses, typically, I'm only looking to compress a couple of dB on buses, maybe like a 2-to-1 ratio. I'm not trying to do anything too heavily handed on the buses. Like a medium fast release, a medium fast attack. Just a couple of dB. We'll bring some makeup gain back. Okay, now we'll do bass too. Now this can also be a place where things like bass, if you wanted to use like a bass amp simulator, if this was like a DI track, you could do it here on the bus as well as opposed to the individual bass track. Now the thing with a bass bus is typically you only have one bass guitar track, so you could either do this on the track itself or on the bus. But if you had multiple bass tracks coming into a bus, this would be a good way to do it. So again, you can do the EQ filtering. Usually this just by listening to this. We don't have an EQ problem on bass. Let's just compress it a little. Okay, we'll use like a Waves plugin maybe. Let's see here. Let's get the stereo version of the CLA2A. Come on. Don't crash on me now. Studio One. Okay, here we go. So here's a CLA2A by Waves again, just picking a compressor. Compress it a bit. Turn down the gain a little. Okay, thickens it up kind of nicely. So you get the idea, right? You can use EQ compression and any other kind of plugins that you may want to use if you're using some third-party plugins to get the buses to sound as good as possible before we even go in to the rest of the mix. Now, what I'm going to do off camera quickly is I'm going to do the guitars, the keys, the horns, the vocals, and I'll bring you back and we'll turn all the plugins on and off at the bus level so you could hear what the cumulative effect is and see how this kind of ties all together. So I'll see you really soon. Back and we've gone ahead and I've processed the other tracks with the same concept as the first few tracks we looked at. So like on guitars, again, I added the fab filter, took out the low cut, a little bit of mids, a little bit of boost, a little bit of highs, put a little bit of CLA3A compression on this. Again, just randomly picking plugins. There's no rhyme or reason in this particular demonstration because you can use, like I said, any EQ, any compressor. Same thing with our keyboards, okay, a little bit of there, and I use the FG Mu again because it tends to have a nice top end. We did the same thing with horns, used the fab filter along with, again, the FG401 by Slate Digital just because it's a nice tube-based compressor. It sounds really great. And then on the vocals, I used an 1176 Blue Stripe by CLA, by Waves, and then I used an API EQ by Waves. And then same thing on the background vocals, except this time I used the Blackface 1176 with the same API EQ. The settings in and of itself don't really worry about. But anyhow, let's listen to this mix with all of these plugins, including the master bus. And then I'm going to take them all away. With one click of the button here, you'll see all the power lights go out, and that'll be our after. So you can hear what this cumulative effect did across this mix just doing this on the buses. So here we go.
deep inside our hearts. Let this love be unconditional. Empower your brother to be better. We're rising up, 'cause we've had enough of the hate
That's before.
that divides us. We're standing up, not giving up. Hold each other up, arms locked together in love. We're waking up and
Okay, so hopefully you can hear the difference there. It's a really big difference if you're listening to this on good headphones or good studio monitors. Again, this is a really great way for you to take, especially if the tracks are recorded well. And I always have to preface everything I say with that, because that is a huge, huge factor in all of this. Really can help speed up your mixing time. We've made this mix sound 70% better, 50% better if you want to be conservative, just by processing some EQ and compression on the buses and doing a little leveling, balancing, without going into any of the individual tracks. So once again, here's with the plugins, and then I'll take them away and then I'll bring them back.
hanging tough. Don't let the hate get inside us. Not breaking up, march together as one. Can't say it enough, arms locked together in love.
Okay, so there is top-down mixing in a nutshell. It's something that I encourage you to try on your next project. Now, once you've done all of this, it doesn't mean the mix is done. You can now go into the individual tracks if you need to shape things a little further or balance levels a little bit further. But now you have a real good starting point, and what you're going to do on those individual tracks is typically going to be a lot less processing if you take the tops-down mixing approach. So when I use this the most, and I use this maybe 50% of the time, 40% of the time, this particular technique is when the tracks are recorded well. When you have crappy recorded tracks, this is much more difficult to do, as you should probably try on your own if you have some tracks that are not recorded so well. So that is our top-down mixing approach for Mix Tip Tuesday this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, like I said at the beginning, I want to give you guys a free gift, and I want to give you a couple of free things, actually. So if you click the link in the description box below, I want you to go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and I have 5 free, that's right, 5 free mixing training courses for you. $210 worth of mixing training where you can take all of the episodes that we've done thus far for Mix Tip Tuesday, take those techniques and those tips and put them into actual practice using the quick mix training courses that I'm going to give you for free, 5 of them at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. And then also in the description box below, you will find a coupon code YouTube25 that will allow you to take 25% off any one of my other training courses at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Another gift that I just want to give you, because I want to thank you so much for watching these Mix Tip Tuesdays and for staying until the end of the video. So again, go out to Home Recording Made Easy, get your 5 free courses, also use the coupon code and save yourself some money on some more in-depth training. And if you really want to learn the craft of mixing and really dive down deep in the mechanics of how this all works, even deeper than what I do here on YouTube, go check out mixingmadeeasy.net. Link will be in the description box below. And until the next Mix Tip Tuesday, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you very soon. Take care.